In this video, we will discuss about introduction to C language up to data types and declaration of variables. Here, first one is history of C language. Who developed C language? Mr. Dennis Rich developed C language in 1972 at Bell Laboratories. This is mainly used for Unix operating system. C is a successor of B language, which was introduced around the early 1970s. The language was formalized in 1988 by American National Standard Institute, that is ANSI. What are the features and advantages of C language? It is easy to learn and it is a structured programming language. Because to solve a large problem, C programming language divides the problem into smaller structural blocks, each of which handles a particular responsibility. C is most widely used and popular system programming language. Most of the state-of-the-art software have been implemented using C. Today's most popular Linux operating system and RDBMS MySQL have been written in C language. In today's mobile phones, we are using Android operating system. That one also was developed by using C language. To learn any natural language like English, Hindi, Telugu, we need to know what are the alphabets required in that language. Like that, in C language also, first we have to know that what is the total character set. The character set in C language includes alphabets, digits, and special symbols. Alphabets are both lowercase letters and uppercase letters, and digits 0 to 9, and special symbols. Totally, C language supports 256 characters. So alphabets are both capital letters and small letters. Digits are 0 to 9. Then the special symbols, those are dollar, ampersand, percentage, like that, which are present on our keyboard. And we can take white spaces also as special symbols, backspaces, all other special symbols we can take as special symbols in C language. And every character in C language has its equivalent ASCII value. What is ASCII? ASCII is American Standard Code for Information Interchange. So those are minus 128 to 127. Each character in C language is assigned one ASCII value. So for example, for capital A it is 65, small a it is 97, for 0 it is 48. So how these things are represented in the memory? So if you take one character, for example, small a, 97, that one is converted into 7-bit binary form. Why you require 7-bit? Because our thing is minus 128 to 127. To represent maximum 127 requires 7-bit. Okay, so totally, so all the things we have to represent in 7-bit forms. Okay, so for each character to store in the C language, 1 byte memory allocated. So how many bits in 1 byte? That is 8 bits. Out of 8 bits, 7 bits are used to store one character. Then what about remaining 1 bit? That is used for error checking purpose. After taking alphabets in any natural language, our teacher taught us how to take words. Okay, like that, apple, ball, like that. Okay. Similarly, in any programming language also, after taking the character set, we have to take the words. So those words in C language are named as C tokens. So under C tokens, what we have to know is keywords, identifiers, constants, operators, strings, and special symbols. First one is keyword. Each keyword in C language has a specific meaning. Users cannot change that meaning, and keywords are not supposed to use as user-defined names for variables, functions, etc. And all these keywords are defined as lowercase letters. Every keyword in C programming language represents something or specifies some kind of action to be performed by the compiler. C language provides as a total 32 keywords. Each keyword has specific meaning. We have to use the keyword for that purpose only. You are not supposed to use keyword for any other purpose. So for example, here integer is a keyword. Okay. So what is the purpose of integer? To declare integer variables, we have to use that int, int. Okay. So int we have to use to declare the integer variable. Similarly, each keyword has a specific meaning, specific purpose. We have to use for that purpose only. Next one is identifier. What do you meant by an identifier? Identifier is a user-defined name of an entity to identify it uniquely during the program execution. These identifiers are used to give names to variables, arrays, functions, etc. To give names by using these identifiers, we have to follow certain rules. So what are those rules? First one is any identifier must contain letters, digits, and underscore symbol only. Next one, an identifier should not start with a numerical value. It can start with a letter or an underscore. We should not use any special symbols in the identifier. Even white space also you are not supposed to use. Keywords should not be used as identifiers. There is no limit for the length of an identifier. However, the compiler considers the first 31 characters only. Here are some examples for identifiers. So some are valid identifiers, some are not valid identifiers. So we will see why those identifiers are not valid. A2 is a valid identifier because it starts with a alphabet and numbers are allowed in the identifier. Next, 2A is not valid identifier. Why? It starts with a 2. So identifier names not start with a 2, not start with a number. Okay. So next one is underscore A is a valid identifier. Next one is V dollar symbol. So here that is not a valid identifier. Why? It contains a special symbol that is dollar. Next one is BA is valid identifier Next one is MLR ITM is also a valid identifier. So here MLR ITM in small letters and MLR ITM in capital letters. Both are valid identifiers, but those are not same. Okay. So C is a case sensitive language. Small a is not equal to capital A. So here also all small letters MLR ITM is not same as capital letters MLR ITM. So these are the some examples for identifiers which are valid. Some are valid and some are not valid identifiers. In that, first one is variable. What do you meant by a variable? A variable is a data name that is used to store a data value. So why name comes as a variable? That is, the value of variable will change during program execution. By declaring a variable, user can inform to compiler about type of data variable can hold. How to declare a variable? To declare a variable, we require data types. To declare a variable, we require data type. First, what do you mean by a data type? A data type is defined as the data storage format that a variable can store a data to perform specific operation. Mainly these data types are divided into three types. First one is primary data types. Those are integer, decimals, character, and no data. So integer represents integer data. Decimals represent decimal data. Characters and no data. For integers, int keyword is used. For decimal numbers, float keyword is used. For characters, char keyword is used. For no data is there, in that case, we have to use void keyword. Next one is derived data types. The data types which are derived from primary data types are called as derived data types. Examples are array, pointer, strings, etc. Next one is user-defined data types. As a user, you can define your own data types by using enum keyword and typedef keyword. After declaring a variable by using a data type, what will happen? The compiler takes that information and depending on your declaration, allocates the memory to the variable. If you declare one variable as a integer variable, how much memory allocated? So that is 4 bytes memory allocated in Linux operating system. So in the case of Windows operating system, for integers, 2 bytes memory allocated. So in integer case only, there is a difference is present between Linux environment and Windows environment. Other than integers, same amount of data allocated in both the environments. Now, you observe this table that memory is decided here. So for short int, long int. What do you mean by this short int and long int? So if you declare one variable as a short int, 2 bytes memory allocated. For integer, 4 bytes. For long int, 8 bytes memory allocated. So that is, if you want to store bigger numbers, we have to go for long ints. If you want to store some medium numbers, we have to go for integer. If you want to go, if you want to store smaller numbers, we have to go with the short int. So depending on your requirement. Then what is the unsigned and signed? What is the difference between those two? In the case of unsigned, only positive numbers are allowed. That is 0 to that particular range. And in the case of signed case, that is negative numbers allowed as well as positive numbers allowed. Okay, so now if you don't mention that is signed as or unsigned, default compiler takes that one as the signed only. Now observe here, this first one, this is a short int. So what is the range of numbers? This is minus 32,000 to some 32,767. So that is how that one is taken. So here, how much memory allocated? 2 bytes memory allocated. 2 bytes is nothing but 16 bits. Okay. Now, what is the how to take the range? Minus 2 power 15 minus 2 power 15 to minus 2 power 15 to 2 power, okay, so 15 2 power 15 minus 1. So you observe that one. Okay. So how to take that one is depending on the memory allocated. So 2 bytes memory allocated. 2 bytes means 16 bits. So 2 power 16 you are dividing into two halves. One half we are taking for the negative numbers. For other half we are taking for the positive numbers. In between 0 also present. Then if it is unsigned, okay, so first one is a short int. So default is that is signed. If you don't mention that is signed or unsigned, compiler takes that one as the signed and allocates memory, and range is like that only. If it is unsigned, that is only positive numbers are allowed starting from 0. So how much memory allocated? 2 bytes. 2 bytes is nothing but 2 bytes is nothing but 16 bits. So 2 power 16, 2 power 16 minus 1. So that is in the case of unsigned into only positive numbers 0 to 2 power 16 minus 1. So like that, depending on the memory, that range is allocated. Then what about this format specifier? Where those things are used? So while reading, we are using the scanf function. In the scanf function, what are the variables you are reading? For those variables, for each variable, you have to specify a format specifier in the format string. If you are reading two integer numbers, for example, how to give your format string? Two integer numbers. For integer, it is percentage %d. So for integer, it is percentage %d. So two times we have to give percentage %d in the format string. For example, if you are reading one integer number, one floating point number, first integer, next floating point number, then what we have to give? Percentage %d and percentage %f we have to give. Order also we have to maintain. So that is the use of those format specifier. So we, depending on your data type, memory is allocated by your variables. Next one is to read those things or to print those things by using scanf and printf. You have to follow this format specifier. So we have to keep in mind these format specifiers. And as I told, in Windows environment, Linux environment, only integer case memory allocation differs. In remaining data types case, memory allocation is same. Next one is declaration. So what is the purpose of declaration? That is, you are informing to the compiler this, but in this particular variable I am going to store this type of data. So in the declaration what we have to provide to declare a variable, what we have to take, you have to take the data type, that is what type of data you are going to store in that variable, and that variable name. So this is the syntax to declare a variable. So you can declare any number of variables by taking same data type. That means all those variables belongs to same category. So like this, we can provide the declaration. See this example, int a. What is the meaning of this one? A is a integer variable. In that you can store integer data only. Next is float b. What do you mean by that one? B is a floating point number, floating point variable. In that you can store only decimal data. Next one is char c. What do you mean by that one? C is a character variable. In that you can store only character data.